Good evening. You are now tuned in to Reaching Your Potential, the weekly podcast about health, wealth, relationships, business, and becoming the very best version of yourself. Your podcast is hosted by yours truly, Darlene Scott, CEO and founder of Basic Bliss Life Coaching, where we take a holistic approach to transformation and success. So I mentioned a few weeks ago that we would definitely talk a little bit about Dr. Emoto's water study. We talked about finding your voice in the relationship. I also spoke to you about toxic relationships. If you have not heard those episodes on toxic relationships and finding your voice in the relationship, you might want to go back and download those episodes first, because they essentially set the stage for what I'm going to talk about this evening in more detail. Words have power. Guard your tongue. Words have power. You have the power to speak into existence things that you don't want. You have the power to speak into existence things that you do want. So you want to be very mindful of the words that you use. Our words have a vibration. More than just a melody or a cadence, our words send vibrations out into the atmosphere, and they affect and shape our very lives. Have you ever had an experience with a person who was completely negative? Everything that they said was negative. Everything about their life was so negative. If you've had that experience with a person, you have experienced walking away from that individual feeling weighed down. Negativity is heavy. It causes stress. It causes back pain. It causes obesity. It causes heart disease. Negativity is heavy. When we encounter negative people that are chronic complainers, it weighs us down because we are absorbing all of that negative energy, and we're starting to think about their circumstances, and we might even get into our heads where we start comparing their circumstances to ours. So words have power. One of the most important studies that really focuses on the power of words is a study that was conducted by Dr. Emoto in 1994. And reading right off of his website, I wanted to share with you how he described it. It was 1994 when the idea to freeze water and observe it with a microscope came upon me. With this method, I was convinced that I should be able to see something like snow crystals. After 2 months of trial and error, this idea bore fruit. Dr. Emoto then goes into explaining what he exposed distilled water to. So he exposed the water to music playing, also an individual praying, and various words. After the water was exposed to these words, music playing, and different vibrations, the water was then frozen and observed under a microscope. What he found, he describes as remarkable. Underneath the microscope, the crystals had been frozen into shapes that were beautiful, symmetrically aligned, beautiful snow crystals, but only when they had been exposed to words that were positive and music that was positive, such as happiness, love, forgiveness, and appreciation. Some other words had to do with hate, demons, and anger. when the water was exposed to the words that were negative, the crystals that formed were not symmetrical. As a matter of fact, they were pretty much distorted, and even under the microscope, they lacked a brilliancy. They didn't appear to reflect light as you would think that a snow crystal would. So what Dr. Emoto did is replicate his study over and over again, because he wanted to be certain that exposing the water to these various words actually triggered the change in the water, the physical change in the water. Now, anyone who studies the power of prayer, the power of forgiveness, or law of attraction, or even anyone in the hard sciences such as physics and biology should be completely taken back and shocked by this, because what it really says is that what is going on inside of us has a direct impact on our outside world. What is going on inside of us spiritually or energetically can impact the world around us in a very physical way. On YouTube, you can look up Greg Braden. Now, if you look up Greg Braden, he is the author of something called The Divine Matrix. He's also the author of a book called The Isaiah Effect. Now, if you look him up on YouTube and type in the power of prayer, he exposes the YouTube community to a hospital in Beijing, which is a medicineless hospital. It's not open anymore, but what they used to do is they would heal people without the use of medicine. So there were people who would go to this hospital and they were diagnosed with terminal diseases. A lot of times they were diagnosed with cancer in the latest stage, and they would go there after they have tried all of the traditional medicines, and they would go there hoping to be cured. So in this hospital, the doctors taught people how to meditate, how to pray, how to eat healthy, how to inhale air and fill up their lungs and slowly release that air. And then they would work with the person to get the person to have enough faith in the process so that they could be healed. So in real time on YouTube, you can see a tumor inside of a person's body shrinking, physically shrinking, as the people chant in their native language, "You are healed, you are healthy." So they're not saying sickness go away, disease be gone. They're saying, "I see you as healed." And these are trained practitioners, people who are trained in meditation and prayer, and they have developed such a strong sense of faith that they are able to say out loud, "You are healed. I see you as healed. I see you as healthy." And as they do this, you watch the tumor shrink right on camera. It's miraculous. What this says to us is our words, our vibrations, our words are nothing more than sounds that communicate what we're really feeling inside. And what we're really feeling inside is what shapes our reality. So when you get out the bed and you're having a bad day and you start to have that self-dialogue, "Here we go again. Oh, it's another bad day. What else can go wrong?" It's always something. When you get out the bed in the morning and you start to have that self-talk, that negative self-talk, you get into a negative momentum first thing in the morning. That morning, you get into a traffic jam. that morning you go to work and you find out you missed the deadline. That afternoon, you may have an argument with your colleague. That evening, you may have a disagreement with your significant other. How does all this relate? Well, when you got out of the bed in the morning, you started this negative self-talk. You started this dialogue about how everything goes wrong and how upset you are. And once you get that ball rolling, it is so hard to rein it back in. So you have to deliberately think about what you're thinking about. I know that sounds crazy, but you have to be happy on purpose. You have to be a deliberate creator, meaning that you're conscious of what you're thinking at all times, knowing that thinking negatively or speaking negatively all the time will continue to yield you negative results. If you keep that in mind, even when you're going through something bad, it's not helpful to keep talking about how bad it is. It's helpful to be solution oriented. And in a leadership position, I experience a lot of my subordinates and people that I mentor or people that I counsel. They come to me with very, very heavy topics. And the first thing that always strikes me is how they are so focused on the problem that there is absolutely no room for the solution to emerge. If you're constantly talking about what the problem is, how do you get from point A to point B and start focusing on the solution? And I find myself being that bridge or that liaison between point A and point B, because now I'm saying, okay, you're talented, you're smart, you're articulate, you have leadership qualities, and I know that you can come up with a solution to this problem. Let's put our heads together. But it always starts with me, number one, identifying their strengths, and then number two, kind of bringing them into this discussion about what life looks like after the problem is solved. So that right there changes the momentum of the conversation, and it takes it in a completely different direction, because now I'm coaching you to be solution oriented. Now I'm bringing you out of darkness and negativity, and I'm bringing you to a place where not only you can discuss solutions, but you see yourself as competent enough to be able to execute what needs to be done for that solution to manifest. So what I'm saying is the power of words really does shape your mood, and it shapes your actions. So if you say I can't, you're 100% right. You can't. If you say it will never happen for me, you're 100% right. It will never happen for you, but not because it wasn't meant to happen for you, but because you've said it's not meant to happen for you. And one of the most important interventions in working with individuals is the installation of hope. I remember in my master's program, one of my professors, he said, man, you guys lucked up this semester because you got the best psychology professor on the whole campus. He said, you didn't know I'm the best. He said, after you finish my class, and his class was a personality class where you had to do like a self-analysis, and you had to talk about your childhood and all these really traumatic things, and come up with a case conceptualization of why you turned out to be who you are now. So it was a deep class, but he started the semester off by saying that we lucked up because we came in and we got the best professor on the whole entire campus. So needless to say, I excelled in that class, and I actually finished with a 4.0 average in the class. Well, last day of school, he tells us that actually he's not the best professor and that he graduated with his doctorate and he barely made it, and that in fact he was like a C student in college. So, the whole class freaked out. Like, why would you say that to us at the beginning of the semester? And basically what he said is, I instilled hope. I told you a story that you wanted to believe, and you wanted to believe the story, and your belief in the story, you holding hope, you believing that I'm the best, directly impacted how you did in this class, because you thought to yourself, if I have the best professor and I lucked up and I'm in this chosen few people, I'm going to do good. And you actually did well. So it was funny because after he did that, when I started seeing clients in my internship and then later in private practice, I would talk to my clients and I would tell them, like in the very beginning, I've worked with people that have presented with similar issues. I've been in this field X amount of years. These are my credentials, and I know that we can get through this together. So I'm speaking that into existence. I'm saying, I know that we can get through this together. And I'm saying it with such a level of confidence because it is in fact an intervention. I want you to believe that I believe, because if I believe it and I can make you believe it, then we engage in a dialogue that talks about overcoming, that talks about solutions, that talks about being positive. We engage in a conversation that is about growth, evolution, getting better, healing, versus the conversation that is more focused on what the problem is and the lack of solution. So that is an intervention that I actually incorporated into my therapeutic sessions. So the installation of hope is nothing more than the seed of faith. And having faith means that you believe something, even though it may not be anything in the material world right now that justifies you holding that belief. So the lady in the medicine-less hospital in Beijing with a huge tumor has nothing in the physical world that is validating that she's going to be healed. She was healed because of what she believed to be true. She was healed because of what the practitioners that gathered around her believed to be true. And in a very powerful way, our thoughts, our words, and inevitably our actions shape our reality. So we want to be mindful of the story that we tell about the past. Don't say we broke up. Don't say she hurt me, it was the worst. Say, this is what I learned from that relationship, when that relationship was completed. Because some relationships, they run their course and they're just complete. It's not necessarily a breakup. And if you listen to Lisa Nichols, she talks about some relationships are just purposeful relationships. They are relationships that are designed to serve a certain purpose. And once that purpose has been fulfilled, then the relationship comes to an end. So the relationship essentially is complete. So when you complete it, the relationship, your dialogue, your conversation should be about what you learned from being in that relationship, how you've grown from being in that relationship, not how horrible it was. And then when you put yourself in the present, how are things going? Which is a question most people ask. How are you doing? How are things going? You're always doing great. You're always doing good. Because let's be honest. Most people who say, how are you doing? They really could not handle if you decided to dump on them everything that really is going on. So just imagine someone's like, hey, how's it going? And you said, oh, well, Let me tell you about my bills. Let me tell you about my relationship. And, my dog, he got sick and I had to get heartworm medication. And, I can't pay my car note. And like, people really don't want to hear that. It's just a formality. Like, how you doing? But when somebody asks you how you are doing, be mindful of how you respond. Like, you're doing great. Like, you are doing great. You're doing fabulous. Things are always working out for you. Things are getting better. Not, I'm maintaining. As good as I could be under the circumstances. So you may say, well, okay, I'm lying. No, you're not lying if you say things are getting better or I'm doing great. Like, if you step back and you make your appreciation list, which I talk about all the time, having an appreciation list. If you step back and you make an appreciation list, you will see that you are actually doing well. You're doing well. There are so many things that we take for granted that we don't appreciate. When we set aside time to label, identify, and number the things that we are appreciative for, we realize that we are doing pretty good. So when someone says, how are you doing? Say, I'm doing pretty good. That's your dialogue. That's your story for today, and stick with it. I'm doing great. And things are always working out for me. Things are always getting better. What is your dialogue for tomorrow? I'm better than I was yesterday. And your dialogue and your narrative revolving around the past is, this is what I learned. Because no matter how bad a situation is, you took something away from it. And if you need one-on-one coaching or counseling to figure out, what did I learn from this relationship? You can hire a professional such as myself. I'm a licensed professional counselor, or you can hire a certified life coach or someone to walk with you one-on-one to help you identify what you learned from that relationship or from that past experience, besides how to be hurt and how to be a victim. So for more information or to reach out to me, you can email me at askdarlene@basic-bliss.com. That's Ask Darlene at basic-bliss.com. You can email me questions about love, relationships, sex, law of attraction, spirituality, health and wellness, and of course, wealth and startups.